When Tiger Woods stepped into a quiet California courtroom for a private land dispute, no one expected anything unusual. He wasn't there for headlines. But before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. He wasn't even on the docket, just quietly observing a case tied to his investment group. But when a powerful judge saw him in the gallery, everything shifted. What started as a civil hearing turned into a slow, calculated attempt to embarrass and control one of the world's most composed icons. What the judge didn't know? Tiger Woods wasn't just prepared. He was recording. And what happened next became a career-ending lesson in arrogance, power, and silent strength. The air in courtroom 3A was cool, almost too quiet, like the room itself was holding its breath. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, polished to a shine, reflecting the late morning light that filtered in through tall windows. The judge's bench sat high, casting a long shadow over the rows of wooden pews. Tiger Woods sat 3 rows back, nearly invisible in a charcoal gray suit, his posture relaxed but alert. No cameras, no entourage, just a man sitting still, waiting. But people noticed. "That's Tiger Woods," someone whispered from behind the bailiff's desk. "What's he doing here?" another voice muttered. "I heard it's about that golf course in Riverside, land dispute or something." Across the room, Judge Nathan Caldwell glanced up from his notes, his jaw twitched, eyes narrow. A flash of recognition, followed by something colder. Annoyance, maybe even resentment. He leaned back in his chair like a man sizing up an uninvited guest. Caldwell was known for his sharp tongue and sharper rulings. He didn't like surprises, and he didn't like being reminded that power could exist outside his courtroom. He adjusted his robe, cleared his throat, and tapped the gavel once. "Let's proceed." But the look he shot Tiger said something else entirely. "You may be famous out there. In here, you're just another name on a docket. Before we dive back into the story, I've got a quick favor to ask. I'm working toward a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and every single one counts. It would mean the world if you'd hit that subscribe button. All right, back to the story. The proceedings were routine at first. Names, dates, paperwork, but it didn't stay that way. Judge Caldwell leaned forward, his voice crisp but clipped. "Mr. Woods, I assume your investment group is familiar with zoning restrictions in this district?" The room went still. It wasn't a question. It was a jab. Tiger didn't flinch. "Yes, Your Honor." Caldwell smiled without humor. "Good, because celebrity doesn't mean immunity from local regulations." Another dig. Another test. Rachel Kim, Tiger's attorney, sat beside him. Calm, poised, unreadable. But she knew the playbook. So did Tiger. The judge delayed rulings, questioned filings he'd already approved, asked for documents he'd seen last week. Every move calculated, not illegal, but pointed. "You're asking for exceptions," he said, flipping through papers he barely read. "But I wonder if you're expecting them." Tiger's tone never changed. "We're here to follow the law." Nothing more. But behind his stillness was steel. He'd seen this before. Different faces. Same game. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Whispers swirled again. "He's pushing him. Trying to make a point." Caldwell wasn't just asserting control. He was daring Tiger to push back. To crack. To react. But Tiger didn't blink. He didn't need to. The gavel struck once. "Recess until 11:15, Judge Caldwell announced, rising from the bench with a slow stretch that carried just a little too much weight. He didn't look at Tiger as he stepped down, but a bailiff did. "Judge Caldwell would like a word," the man said, eyes avoiding contact. "In chambers." Rachel Kim gave Tiger a glance, barely a movement, but he nodded once, got up, followed. Inside, the chambers were dark-paneled, lined with law books no one had touched in years. The door clicked shut behind them. No court reporter, no cameras, no witnesses. Just 2 men and something unspoken between them. Caldwell poured himself a glass of water, didn't offer one. "This land case," he began, swirling the glass like it was wine, "isn't complicated. But things take time, especially with public figures involved. Headlines, optics, you understand?" Tiger said nothing. Caldwell set the glass down. "But time can move faster, Mr. Woods, for the right reasons. The right incentives." Then he looked up. "This could go away. Quietly. If you're willing to be generous." The words weren't loud. They didn't have to be. The meaning hit like a slap across the table. Bribery. Plain and simple. Tiger didn't blink. He leaned forward just slightly, his voice low. "Is this how justice works now?" Caldwell smiled, tight and dismissive. "Don't be dramatic." Tiger stood. His silence said more than words ever could. The door opened with a soft click. Tiger stepped out of chambers, his face unreadable. Rachel Kim was already waiting, leaning against the corridor wall, with her phone in her hand but not looking at it. She studied his face the second he emerged. No words, just a shift in his eyes. Rachel slipped the phone into her coat pocket. "What did he say?" she asked. Tiger adjusted the cuff of his sleeve, eyes still distant, then calmly. "Call them." Rachel paused. Barely. But didn't ask who. She didn't need to. She gave a single silent nod and turned away. Already dialing before she rounded the corner, Tiger stood alone for a moment in the quiet hallway. The hum of fluorescent lights above him the only sound. His jaw tensed, but his breath stayed slow. Controlled. He wasn't angry. He was ready. Back in the courtroom, clerks shuffled papers. Lawyers made small talk. No one knew what had just happened behind that heavy door. No one but Rachel. And whoever was on the other end of that call. Tiger walked back into the room like nothing had changed, but something had. Caldwell returned to the bench 2 minutes later, face as composed as ever. But he didn't meet Tiger's eyes. He didn't know the call had already been made. He didn't know what was coming, but Tiger did. And for the first time all morning, he allowed himself the smallest smile. Because now, the real game had started. When court reconvened, the atmosphere felt unchanged. But it wasn't. Not to Tiger. He noticed it before most. 2 men entered quietly through the rear doors, suits without ties, no notepads. One wore mirrored glasses despite the indoor lighting. They didn't look around. They already knew who they came for. Federal agents, plainclothes, observers officially. Caldwell didn't see them yet. He sat straighter in his chair, tapping the gavel once, as if to reassert his grip on the room. His voice was sharper now, more performative. "We'll now return to the matter of zoning variances and property line disclosures, Picapo," he said, dragging each syllable like a tired actor reading stage directions. "Let's make this quick." Rachel Kim returned to her seat beside Tiger, sliding a slim flash drive into her laptop with quiet precision. She didn't say anything yet. She didn't need to. Tiger leaned back, eyes steady, not smug, not confrontational, just centered. Like someone watching the final few moves of a chess game he'd already won. Caldwell shuffled some papers, ignoring Rachel's hand as it raised. But she waited, still, unblinking. Tiger didn't move. The judge cleared his throat again, louder this time. "Miss Kim, is there something urgent?" Her reply was crisp. "Yes, Your Honor. Evidence." The word stopped the room mid-breath. Tiger's gaze flicked toward the back row, just once. The agents hadn't moved. They didn't need to. They were only here to listen. For now. Rachel didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your Honor," she said, stepping forward, flash drive in hand, "we have new evidence relevant to this proceeding." Her tone was calm, professional, laced with something subtle but undeniable, gravity. She moved to the court's AV setup, plugged the flash drive in and paused. Judge Caldwell leaned forward, trying to sound uninterested. "And what exactly are we about to hear?" Rachel turned her head just slightly, just enough. "Your voice." Then she pressed play. The courtroom speakers crackled for a split second. Then came the unmistakable sound of a door closing, a glass being set down. And then the voice. "This land case isn't complicated, but things take time, especially with public figures involved, you understand?" The room held its breath. Caldwell's voice continued, smooth and low. "This could go away, quietly, if you're willing to be generous." The silence that followed was heavier than any gavel. Caldwell's mouth twitched. His fingers tapped the bench, too quickly. Tiger sat motionless, hands folded in his lap. He wasn't smiling. Rachel returned to her seat like nothing unusual had happened. Like the truth hadn't just shattered the walls around them. 2 agents in the back row leaned forward slightly. Caldwell opened his mouth, but no one was listening to him anymore. The gavel slammed down. "Order!" Caldwell barked, but his voice cracked halfway through the word. "That recording is inadmissible, illegally obtained. This is a stunt, celebrity theatrics designed to discredit this court." But no one flinched. The courtroom had already decided which voice carried weight, and it wasn't his. Rachel raised an eyebrow but didn't rise. Tiger remained still, watching. Caldwell stood from the bench, his face flushed. "I'll be filing a motion to strike." That's when the taller of the 2 plainclothes agents stepped forward, badge in hand. His voice was measured, flat. "Judge Nathan Caldwell." Caldwell froze mid-sentence. "You are instructed to step away from the bench immediately. We have questions regarding conduct that may constitute judicial misconduct, bribery, and abuse of authority under federal statute. Gasps echoed. The bailiff didn't move. Neither did Caldwell. His hand gripped the edge of the bench like it could anchor him. "I am the presiding judge in this courtroom," he snapped. You can't just get... But the other agent had already moved to the front. "We can," he said. "And we will." Caldwell looked at the gallery. At Tiger. At Rachel. No allies. No lifelines. Only eyes. Watching. And a silence that wasn't going anywhere. He stepped back slowly from the bench, still trying to save face. But the robe he wore no longer looked like armor. It looked like a costume. And now, the show was over. For a moment it looked like Caldwell might hold his ground. His back straightened. His hand lifted as if to speak. His mouth opened, but no words came. One of the agents stepped forward, pulling a pair of cuffs from his belt with a slow, deliberate motion. "You don't need to do this," Caldwell said, his voice cracking mid-sentence. "This is a misunderstanding. You can't..." The agent cut him off with practiced calm. "You're not above the law, sir. Turn around." Caldwell hesitated, long enough to imagine a way out, but there wasn't one. His hands finally moved behind his back, slow, reluctant. The cuffs clicked shut, sharp, final. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Phones were already out. Flashes. Whispers. A tide of disbelief. Tiger didn't move. He sat still, same posture, same expression, like a man watching gravity take its course. Caldwell's voice dropped lower. "I have friends. I have people. You don't know who I am." But he was wrong. Everyone knew now. The robe, once a shield, hung awkwardly around his wrists as the agents walked him past the gallery. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan Caldwell wasn't in control. He was a headline waiting to happen. And Tiger? He didn't need to say a word. His silence did the talking. By the next morning, the story had legs and teeth. Clips from the courtroom hit social media before the judge even made it to booking, the audio recording, the moment the cuffs went on, the way Caldwell's voice cracked when he realized the cameras were rolling. The headlines spread like wildfire. "Corrupt judge tries to intimidate Tiger Woods, ends up in handcuffs." It was too perfect to ignore. By noon, it was trending on every major platform. Late-night anchors had already lined up the sound bites. Hashtags exploded. Reaction videos multiplied by the hour. But behind the screens, real things started to move. The Judicial Review Board opened an immediate investigation. Multiple reporters filed FOIA requests. Senators and state reps posted statements, most of them thinly veiled attempts at damage control. And Rachel Kim? She declined every interview, every podcast, every outlet offering 5-figure fees for a soundbite. Her only statement was a single sentence, emailed from a personal account. The facts speak for themselves. That was all she needed to say. Tiger never gave a comment. He didn't tweet, didn't post. He went back to his routine like none of it had touched him. But people noticed. Legal blogs dissected every frame of courtroom footage. Editorials followed. A law professor called it one of the most striking public accountability moments in recent judicial memory. And in quiet offices across the country, other judges started checking themselves, asking questions they hadn't before. Because it wasn't just about Tiger Woods anymore. It was about what happens when someone with power assumes no one's watching, and what happens when they're wrong. The sun hung low over the rolling hills of a local golf course, casting long, golden streaks across the fairways. Not a tournament, no cameras, just a group of kids from a youth mentorship program chasing each other across the grass with secondhand clubs and oversized smiles. Tiger walked among them, calm, easy, a quiet leader rather than a legend. He carried no entourage, wore no logo, just a faded cap and sneakers dusted with grass. One boy asked him how to line up a shot. Another just wanted to know what kind of cereal he liked. Tiger answered both with the same gentle tone. Off to the side, a reporter stood with a camera phone, far enough to not intrude. She didn't shout questions, just asked one as he passed by. "How did you stay so calm?" she said, not expecting an answer. Tiger stopped walking. He looked at the horizon for a beat, then down at the group of laughing kids ahead of him. His voice was low, simple. "When you know the truth," he said, "you don't have to shout." The reporter didn't reply. Didn't need to. Tiger walked on, rejoining the kids, helping one adjust their grip, gently nudging another toward the tee. And as their laughter echoed through the open air, something unspoken settled in the space behind him. Not revenge, not triumph, just something deeper. A legacy earned, not through noise or fury, but through presence, patience, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. When Tiger Woods walked into the courtroom that morning, no one expected what would happen next. But before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The judge, arrogant and dismissive, thought he could humiliate the golfing legend with a few sharp words. But what he didn't know was that Tiger Woods wasn't just there as a defendant. He was there to expose corruption in the very system that had tried to break him. What followed would not only change the judge's fate, but would become a powerful statement about justice, integrity, and how even the most respected figures can fall when they forget the meaning of fairness. The courtroom was eerily quiet, save for the rhythmic tapping of Judge Harrington's gavel against the wood. Tiger Woods sat motionless, his back straight, his jaw set, as the judge's eyes locked onto him from across the bench. It wasn't the first time Tiger had faced adversity, but this time it felt different. The air was thick, charged with tension. The spectators in the gallery were on edge, each of them knowing that what happened here today could change everything. "Mr. Woods," Judge Harrington began, his voice low but piercing, "let's talk about your career. Or, should I say, what's left of it." The words hung in the air like a loaded gun, ready to fire. Tiger didn't flinch. He'd been in the spotlight his entire life, under scrutiny from both fans and critics, but this felt personal. The judge leaned forward, his fingers tapping against his desk. "You think the world still cares about Tiger Woods? You're nothing more than a fallen star, a relic of a time gone by." The words sliced through the silence, sharp and unforgiving. The courtroom was silent, save for the sound of Tiger's breathing. His face remained stoic. But inside, a storm was building. The tension was unbearable, and it felt like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to snap. Tiger knew he needed to keep his composure, but the longer the judge continued, the more something inside him began to stir. Before we dive back into the story, I've got a quick favor to ask. I'm working toward a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and every single one counts. It would mean the world if you'd hit that subscribe button. All right, back to the story. Judge Harrington's voice dripped with sarcasm as he leaned back in his chair. "Let's be honest here, Tiger. The public has long forgotten you. You were once the shining star of golf, but now you're just another headline of a broken man." His words were laced with contempt, every syllable designed to tear down what was left of Tiger's legacy. Tiger didn't react. His jaw remained tight, his eyes never leaving the judge. He had faced tougher battles, on and off the course, but something about this felt different. This wasn't just about golf. This was about who he was as a man. And Judge Harrington, in his arrogance, had just crossed a line. "You've had your fall from grace, Mr. Woods," the judge continued, the crowd's murmurs fading as they waited for his next words. "The public loved you, but that was a long time ago. What have you done lately, huh? Is it still just about the money? Or is there anything left to salvage?" Tiger's expression didn't change, but deep within him, something shifted. There was a flicker in his eyes, something the judge hadn't noticed, something fierce, something burning. For the first time, Tiger's calm facade seemed like it might crack. He had endured insults before, but this was personal, and Judge Harrington would soon learn that Tiger Woods wasn't someone to underestimate. Tiger's fingers tightened around the edges of his wristwatch, the only visible sign of his building frustration. His pulse quickened, but his expression remained as calm as ever. The weight of the judge's words, dripping with disdain, seemed to hang in the air like smoke, suffocating him. He had been through hell before, but there was something about this moment that made his chest feel tighter, the room closing in around him. The courtroom was silent, every eye on Tiger, waiting for his response. But he didn't speak. Instead, he stood tall, his back straight, his jaw set firmly. Every inch of his body screamed resolve, even as the judge's voice continued to cut through the tension. The judge smirked, watching Tiger's every move, hoping for some sign of weakness, some crack in the armor. But there was none. For a fleeting moment, Tiger's eyes flickered toward the gallery, meeting the gaze of a few spectators. The calmness in his face was almost impenetrable, but there was something in his eyes, something that suggested a storm was brewing beneath the surface. The moment hung there, suspended in time, and then the gavel slammed down. The sound reverberated through the room, but before anyone could react, something shifted in the air. The room was about to explode, but no one knew exactly what would happen next. Just as the courtroom was beginning to feel like it might erupt, the doors at the back of the room creaked open. Pam Bondi, the state attorney, stepped into the courtroom, her heels clicking against the floor. Her presence was immediately felt. There was an air of quiet authority around her, and her sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail. She had been observing the proceedings from the back, her gaze locked on the tension between Tiger and Judge Harrington. The courtroom paused. It was as if time itself slowed down for a moment. Bondi's eyes, narrowed with suspicion, were fixed firmly on the judge. The air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, and the entire room could sense something was about to change. Without missing a beat, Pam Bondi walked straight toward the bench, her steps purposeful, each one louder than the next. The entire courtroom fell silent as she made her way past the spectators, her eyes locked on Judge Harrington. The moment her heels stopped, she didn't wait for permission. "Judge Harrington," she began, her voice steady but filled with authority, "you've been under investigation for your past dealings, corrupt decisions that have tainted your position." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, jolting everyone in the room. The gallery shifted uneasily, whispers starting to buzz, but Bondi wasn't done. She calmly demanded immediate action. The judge's face twitched, his usual smirk now replaced by something more dangerous. He leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing. The room was thick with tension as everyone waited, unsure of how this was going to play out. The very foundation of the courtroom had just shifted. Judge Harrington stared at Pam Bondi, his mouth opening slightly, his expression one of disbelief. How could she have known? What had she uncovered? The courtroom held its breath, waiting for the judge to strike back, to deny the allegations with his usual bravado. But instead, there was only a long, lingering silence. Could he talk his way out of this? Could he find a way to dismiss these claims? To preserve his power? The weight of his past crimes, now exposed, seemed to weigh him down, and for the first time he was unsure of his next move. The entire room was on edge. No one knew if the judge would simply deny everything, or if his own sins would finally catch up to him. His reputation, his power, everything was now at risk. What would happen next? Would he be forced to face the consequences of his actions, or would he try to maneuver out of this? Bondi had set the stage, and now it was up to the judge to respond. What was she doing here? Why had she waited so long to make her presence known? And most importantly, what was going to happen now that she had entered the fray? The tension thickened. The room held its collective breath. Bondi moved forward, her steps deliberate, and every person in the room wondered, was she here to calm the situation or escalate it further? What did she have planned for Judge Harrington? The moment was loaded with uncertainty, and the world seemed to pause as her gaze locked with Tiger's. Something told him that the real battle was only just beginning. Bondi's voice cut through the thick tension in the courtroom. "The arrest warrants have already been signed, Judge Harrington. You're done." The words echoed like a bombshell, sending shockwaves through the room. Before the judge could respond, the doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. Police officers in full uniform stormed in, their presence immediate and commanding. The onlookers, who had been holding their breath, now gasped in unison as the officers moved toward the bench. Judge Harrington stood frozen for a moment, eyes wide, mouth slightly agape. His arrogance, once so absolute, faltered. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The police officers moved quickly, efficiently. With a firm grip, they placed him in handcuffs, his arms pinned behind him. The courtroom erupted into chaos. The spectators stood up, whispers and gasps flooding the air, some reaching for their phones to capture the moment. The once powerful judge, who had lorded over this room for so long, was now nothing more than another criminal being led away. As they dragged him out, a cold, bitter silence followed them. The gavel was still, unmoved, but the room was forever changed. And just like that, the power dynamics of the courtroom had shifted. Judge Harrington was no longer in control. The man who had insulted Tiger Woods now had no choice but to face his own reckoning. Tiger Woods sat in his seat, still as a statue, his face a picture of composure. He had witnessed many highs and lows in his life, triumphs, defeats, controversies. But today something different stirred within him. As the officers dragged Judge Harrington out of the courtroom in cuffs, Tiger's eyes followed the motion, his gaze sharp and unyielding. There was no visible sign of emotion, but something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or perhaps satisfaction. For the first time in this entire ordeal, Tiger felt the weight of justice shifting in his favor. The judge, who had tried so hard to tear him down, was now facing the consequences of his own actions. The room, still buzzing with shock and disbelief, faded into the background. Tiger's focus remained on the exit, watching the doors close behind the judge. It wasn't just about this moment, it was about the bigger picture, about fairness, about standing up when you've been knocked down too many times. Bondi approached him, her steps measured, purposeful. She offered a quiet nod, acknowledging the victory, and without saying a word, Tiger returned the gesture. There was no need for grand speeches or cheers. In this moment, their unspoken understanding said everything. Justice had been served. What will this mean for the future of the judiciary? As news of Judge Harrington's arrest spreads, the shockwaves reverberate far beyond the courtroom. Bondi's decisive action is hailed by many as a triumph of justice, a rare moment where the system righted itself. But beneath the surface, questions linger. How many others in positions of power have abused their authority in the same way? How deep does the corruption run? The story begins to unfold beyond this single courtroom with whispers of hidden agendas, shady deals, and questionable rulings in courtrooms across the country. Legal professionals, reporters, and citizens alike begin to ask, who else is part of this tangled web of corruption? Who else has slipped under the radar, operating unchecked, using their positions to further their own interests? As the media picks up the story, the judiciary finds itself under a microscope. Investigations are launched, inquiries are made, and what was once a quiet, protected world of legal power is now being exposed to the harsh light of public scrutiny. The arrest of one judge has become the catalyst for a broader movement, one that could change the face of the legal system forever. The question remains, how many more will fall? With Judge Harrington now in cuffs, the weight in the courtroom lifted, and Tiger Woods stood from his seat. The world outside awaited him. But Tiger wasn't in any rush. He had just witnessed the collapse of one man's empire of corruption, but he knew this moment was just the beginning. He glanced back at Pam Bondi, who was surrounded by reporters and admirers. She had fought for justice when others might have backed down. They shared a brief, silent look, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Her work was done, but for Tiger the journey had just started. As he walked out of the courtroom, his steps were steady, purposeful. This moment, this victory, wasn't just about him, it was about something much larger. He knew the consequences of what had just unfolded would reach far beyond his personal battles. It wasn't just about a corrupt judge being held accountable, it was about setting a precedent, about standing up to injustice in all its forms. Tiger had always been a fighter, but today he was more than just a man on a golf course. Today, he had become part of something bigger, something that could change the system. As he exited the courtroom and stepped into the unknown, Tiger knew that his next move would shape his future, and for the first time in a long time, he felt ready for whatever came next. This story was intense, but the one waiting for you on the right? It's even more insane. Click it now. You won't believe what happens next.